What's up, everybody? Today I'm going to talk about flat files. I'm going to show you how to add products and more specifically, how to add variations using flat files.
A few years ago, Nine University started out as two guys building an Amazon business selling cornhole lights and talking about it in front of a camera in a 300 square foot studio apartment. Now it's an organization with 150 plus people on payroll featured in the likes of Forbes, Business Insider, Sourcing Journal, and more. Nine University is a team, and we have to share what we know with the world, with you. It's not about what we offer, it's about gaining knowledge and expertise from real people, building real businesses that you can apply to yourself. Let's freaking get it. Nine University. It's who we are.
All right, I'm logged into my Seller Central account here, and the first thing that we need to do is download the file that's associated with the category we want to list a product in. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to Inventory, Add Products via Upload, and then we're going to click on the Download an Inventory File tab over here on the left. So once you're on this screen, you have the option of either choosing the category by going through the flow, or you can enter just some keywords into the search tool. So if we were doing this, we could go to Home and Kitchen, Kitchen and Dining, Cutlery, Knife Accessories, and then say cutting boards, right? And that would give us the option here. This would show the details for the category that we selected. Or you could alternatively just type in cutting board up in the search tool area, and you'll have some options for some of the pre-selected categories. So let's say that we choose this one right here, right? So it's basically the same category, same option. So you end up with the same results regardless of which approach you take. I usually like to make sure that advanced is selected because this gives you a lot of the fields to work with when you download the file. So then what we want to do is we want to click on Generate Template. This is going to generate an Excel file that we're going to go ahead and download. Once it's downloaded, I'm going to open it up. Okay. If you're using Excel, you might have to enable editing up here. I don't know if every version of Excel does that, but mine does. So Amazon does a pretty good job of showing you examples and reference information with respect to these files. So we're going to be working through the template tab, but let me just kind of quickly go through what the other tabs show you. So, well, actually, let's start here with instructions. So we started with the instruction tab. There's actually it's probably worth reading through this the first time, but there's not a lot of information that's specific to using the spreadsheet. Same thing with images. It just gives you a sense of what images are good to work with and which ones are not. If you've been selling on Amazon for a while, you probably already know a lot of this stuff. Where you get some really good info is if you click on Example, and this basically shows the headings that are available in the spreadsheet, and then some example information related to how you would think about filling it out. This row here on the left in orange or kind of whatever color that is, that gives you a little bit of a description. That's not actually shown in the actual template that you'll be using. So you can always come back and refer to this for some information about how each field should be filled out. Another thing you can check out is data definitions. This is really what I refer to in most cases. I just find it a little bit easier to sort of work with this this format. So if I have a question about how something should be filled out, I'll just, I'll go to the field name and then look at the instructions and the accepted values, an example of what would be a good value, and then whether or not it's required. So if you're not sure what should be in the external product ID type, it basically tells you that a UPC code is the type of information that you would want to fill in here. And again, I'm going to go through this specifically as I get into the template, but if you have questions, you can always refer back to some of these other tabs. The browse data doesn't really give you much information. It just summarizes the category that you had selected earlier. And then valid values. This gives you the allowable values for fields that require specific inputs, right? So for, let's say, when we get to variations, you'll have the option of choosing a variation for designating a specific SKU as either the parent or the child. So valid values basically shows you that you have two options when you get to that part of the process. So let's actually jump right into the template now. So you'll see that it's a pretty long template. It starts in column A, and then if you scroll all the way to the right, it goes to GV. So I don't know how many that is in numbers. That's probably got to be, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70 fields, I think. But not all of them need to be filled out. Try and fill out as much as you can. But if something is irrelevant, don't, it's fine to just skip it. Not everything here is required. Again, you can refer back to the data definitions tab to see which fields are required and which are not. And you'll see that only a few are actually required. So you've got these first, these first 9 or first 10 here. Sorry, like the first 10. And then most of the others are optional with some that are preferred. There will be some that are conditionally required. So if you fill out, if you're trying to create a variation and you fill something out that says the variation is by color, then you're going to have to fill out the color of the product, even though it's not typically required. It is conditionally required if you're creating variations that are about color. So I'll go through each of the required elements, and then what I'm probably going to do is I'm going to jump to variations to show you how variations work, and then I'll limit it to that because everything else is pretty self-explanatory, may not be relevant, but I think those are probably the most important parts to focus on. So this first one here, product type, you usually only have one option. So this is going to be driven by the category that you selected and the template that you selected. So you're really only going to have one option to download. Now, I should have noted, you can, when you're downloading the file, you can select multiple subcategories. So this, we're in the home and kitchen category. I could have selected a few different categories for if I have multiple products I'm trying to upload, and I think that would give us different options here to choose from. I typically tend to do one product type at a time. So usually when I download these things, I only have one option, but I think if you do download multiple categories, you'll see a few different options there, and then you would just choose the one that's specific to the product that you're listing. So seller SKU, again, this is just like if you're on you're going through the web, if you're listing a product through the online format, through Amazon.com, through Seller Central, you would just select a SKU. Let's say cutting board 01, right? Brand name. If you're brand registered, you'll have the ability to choose your brand from the drop-down area here. If you're not brand registered, you would just input something rather than seeing a drop-down field. Put in the product name. This is going to be your title. So for this example, let's just say bamboo cutting board with grooved edges, right? You'd probably want to optimize that. Product ID. This is going to be, well, let me jump to the next one. So your product ID type, you can either choose, this is where you would input your UPC code. If you have an EAN, you would select that as well, or if you have some other type of code, I always use a UPC. So under product ID, you would go ahead and just input whatever your UPC code is. I don't have one for this example, but you should have one if you're going through this. Item type keyword, you would just you would just choose the option that is associated with the download that you had created before. Enter your price, let's say $19.99. Quantity. If you're shipping FBA, you can just leave this blank. I never input this. If you're doing a fulfilled by merchant, then you might want to put your quantity in there, or you can leave it blank and then enter it later. So image, even though here it says that image is required. You can actually leave it blank during this process. Your listing will be suppressed until you upload an image, but it is fine to leave it blank before you do the upload and then upload the image through the web interface. And then the same thing, you've got all these other images here. So in terms of required information, there's really not that much. It's the main information here. And then I've always had to actually fill in the condition type as well. So if you scroll all the way to the end in red, you'll see a few different conditions. I always have new. Actually, I don't know if it says that it's required. Let's go back. Let's go down and see. Oh, it does actually. Sorry. Actually, it says that it's optional. Every time I try and leave it blank, I seem to get a message saying that it's required. You do have some compliance, some compliance fields that say they're required. However, I've never, unless if you have something with batteries and you note that it does have batteries, if you put true here, then you will have some other required fields. But for the most part, you don't actually have to fill out all this information, even though it says it's required. So I know I said to refer back to the data definitions, but in truth, in my experience, all you really need to upload to get something live is this, these first 9 fields here, and then the item condition type. So let's go back to this product. So if I was listing a product that was only one, it was only a single product with no variations, I could literally take it as is and upload it. And I'll show you the upload process in a minute. But what I want to do is I want to also show you how you would create something that has a variation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just, for this example, I'm going to copy this into the next 2 fields. So this first field is going to be our parent ASIN. So I'm deleting the product ID type, because the parent ASIN isn't going to be a live product. It's just an ASIN that ties together the 2 children. It doesn't actually need a product ID type. And in that case, you can leave it blank. And I would also leave the product ID blank. If for the 2 children, I would have to fill in a UPC code, for these two, for the 2 children, but the product ID and the product ID type would be blank. You can actually even leave the price blank for the parent. And then what I'll typically do for the SKU is I'll just, I'll put like cutting board parent, this is cutting board 01. The second one, I might say cutting board 02 or whatever designation you want to put. And then you would update the titles as needed as well. You can leave these blank, just like I mentioned before. But then when you get to the variation section, so we're going to designate the first one as the parent and the next 2 as a child. For parent SKU, we're going to go back and actually pull the SKU that we created for that parent, and we're going to input it here. So this is basically saying that these 2 children are associated with this parent. And then the next thing you want to do is fill out the relationship type. Here the only option is variation. You're going to input that for the 2 children, but you're going to leave it blank for the parent. And then for variation theme, you have a few different options here. You can have something that is where the variation is by size, by color, by material. Let's say that we have that we're doing this by size. We've got 2 cutting boards, a large and a small. So I would put size name as the variation theme for each of these 3 line items. So again, for the parent, we're going to leave blank the parent SKU and the relationship type, but we're going to fill out the parentage and the variation theme. For the children, we're going to fill out all 4 values. I'm sorry, yeah, all 4 values. Oh, one thing I should have noted actually before. This is important. So this field here, update, delete, you'll see that there are 3 options: update, partial update, and delete. If you have live listings and you want to delete them, that's the only time you would use delete. I actually never do this. I've never done that through a flat file. Anytime I want to delete a listing, I do it through the web interface. So the only ones that I ever use are update and partial update. Partial update will only update fields that you've filled in. So if you have an existing ASIN and you're using a flat file to update it, it's only going to update the fields that are populated. So if you had a your bullet points already filled in on the listing and left them blank in the spreadsheet with a partial update designation, then it's not going to change the bullet points that already exist. However, if you were to use update and you were to leave this blank, then it would erase the information that already exists, and you would end up with empty bullet points. So this isn't really that important if you are creating a new listing, but if you're updating an existing listing, unless you want to really overwrite a lot of the existing information, I pretty much always suggest that you use partial update. There are instances where you would want to use update, but in 9 times out of 10, partial update is what you'd want to use. So again, you'll go through the same process of filling in most of this information as it's needed, like your product description, your bullet points, a lot of the same information that you would find through the web interface. But let's jump to the points that are more specific to the variation. So here you'll see it's a pretty narrow column, but you'll see size. And this is where you're going to select the options that show up for the variations that we're choosing. So I'm going to just say this first one. Let's say this first one is large, the second one is small, right? And we would leave the parent one blank. If we had a color variation, then we would say, like blue and red, and then under color map, you could designate what the where is it? Okay, you could designate what the color theme is, like the genre of the color. But the color is really what will show up on the listing. So you could have the color map say blue, but under color you can call it whatever you want. You can call it midnight blue and ruby red, and this is what will show up in on the live listing. Whereas the color map helps Amazon really understand what the color is, so that if customers are sorting by color, it has a reference. But again, in our example here, I only chose size as the variation field. So while we can still keep this information populated, it's not going to show up on the live listing as a variation element unless we had selected that as part of this process. So, I could have selected color name instead of size name, or alternatively, what we could do is we could do size name and color name. So this would give you the option to have a large red, a large blue, and a small red and a small blue. So, that's how you would fill this out for variations. And then if your variation was related to material type, then you would fill that out here. But hopefully this gives you an idea of how to actually use variations when you are when you're trying to fill out a flat file. So then what you would do is you would just save your file. You'd go back to your Amazon account, click on upload your inventory file. You can check the file by by clicking here, uploading it, click check my file, and then it'll tell you if there's any errors. Otherwise, what you can do is just go right to actually uploading it for production purposes. And once you do the upload, it usually just takes a couple of minutes, and and you should see everything live on your inventory page. If you do happen to have any errors, it will give you an option to download. Here, let me go over here. So this is a list of of previous uploads that I've done. So if you have, if there were any errors, you could click on download your processing report, and it'll give you information about, perhaps what you need to update or maybe what wasn't correct. So with that, I mean, that's pretty much it. Hopefully that walks you through how to use a flat file and how to also use it for variations. I know a lot of people have questions about how to do that, so I hope this was very helpful. With that, thanks for your time. I appreciate it.